Great. So now that we've installed QuickFIX for Python via the pre-built wheel archive that we downloaded from this website, we're now going to go ahead and implement this fix application interface that we've been talking about in a few recent tutorials. We're going to do this in Python, of course, since we've installed QuickFIX for Python. And initially, we're going to create a template class, and that class will very simply define all these methods and have Parse for each function, as we haven't yet implemented any functionality. To visualize where these methods actually come from that we need to override, let's go into QuickFIX 44 and QuickFIX.py. These are the files that you'll find inside QuickFIX 1.15.1 if you download the source and go into the repository with the Python scripts in there. These files have been automatically generated by Swig, and they implement the C++ interface that QuickFIX ships with. And over here, you'll find inside QuickFIX that it implements an application class that we're going to be subclassing out of in our application. And here is that class. So inside here, you can see all these methods that have been implemented in an abstract fashion, and it is these methods that call specific QuickFIX methods down the line. What we need to do is to implement the functionality whereby these can be called correctly. So this essentially allows us to abstract ourselves away from the actual fix application and override the methods that have been provided to us and develop functionality quite easily. We're going to take this template script and convert it into this, which is basically a subclass of fix.application, and has all the methods that we just saw in template state implemented with specific functionality for pricing connections. So let's go through each method in detail from a Python developer's perspective, so algorithmic traders watching this can get a very deep insight into how to go about thinking when developing a fix application in Python using QuickFIX. So the first method, onCreate, will contain a few pieces of information. You'll see that the class, you'll see that we've added a few bits to the class here. So let's go through them. In the init function, we create ourselves a logger, so we can take each and every event that's happening and save it to us, save it somewhere so we can look at it later, or if we have some functionality within the application that relies on that logging functionality, then we can use that code later on. We've defined ourselves a local session variable and a connected state variable, username and password, because these two will be required to, in addition to your sender comp ID and target comp ID combinations, these two will be required for you to authenticate with the Darwinex Fix server. We've got some additional items here that I'll come back to in future videos as we study these specific functions that deal to them. But for now, let's quickly head over to the implementation of the default template methods that I showed you earlier. And we'll be covering a few of these: onCreate, onLogout, onMessage, and toAdmin in this video. And in future videos, we'll be covering from admin, from app, to app, and from app. With regards to onCreate basically saves the session ID, starts the logger, sends out a message that the application's been created with the session ID. onLogon will fire whenever a logon event is fired, and it will set the connection state to true, and it will send out a message that the login's been successful. When the onLogout event happens, then it will do exactly the same thing, only this time it'll say the logout's been successful. onMessage is trivial, it just simply prints out the message that's come through. You'll notice that there are some functions here, parse fix message. This is a custom function that we've implemented in Python for you, and it is this function that will take a message that comes in its state and transform it into a human readable fix message. To look at the source code for parse fix message, let's go over to DWX fix helpers. That is the file that contains this information. And you'll see that the parse fix message function simply takes the message, decomposes it into a string, and replaces the /x0 in character with an empty space for readability. And that's pretty much it. Going back to DWX fix pricing, the toAdmin method, as we've talked about in previous tutorials, is a method where all outgoing session level messages can be accessed. These include logon, logout, heartbeat, and you can access these before they are sent to the fix server. So when a message has been composed and it's about to go to the fix server, this function is where you can implement functionality in order to possibly change anything about the message that you'd like going through. In our particular case, when you're processing a logon event, for example, you'll need to include your username and password. And by default, the fix session variables don't contain your username and password. So you need to specify it by setting the fields yourself in the message prior to the message being delivered to the fix server. So in this particular case, we can read the type of the message and see if it's a logon message. And if it is, then we will insert our username and password during this logon event prior to the message being sent to the fix server. Similarly, in the case of a logout message, if we're sending a logout request, then we can just simply print that we're trying to log out. And if we're sending a heartbeat, then we can simply print that we're sending a heartbeat. If it's not one of these events that we're modeling at the moment, then we can, for now, simply print out the parsed fix message. And in future, we'll implement additional functionality here in terms of events that will add more use cases where we'll need to possibly do something with the data prior to sending it. So that's it for the toAdmin function. This gives you an idea of how to go about overriding functions that are provided to you by default through the fix.application class. In the next tutorial, we'll be focusing on from admin, to app, and from app, and the functionality we require therein to fully complete our pricing connector class. See you in the next tutorial. As always, if you enjoyed this presentation, please do consider sharing it with your social networks, colleagues, co-workers, and friends. And do subscribe to the Darwinex YouTube channel so you remain up to date with all future videos that will be released in this series and other topics discussed on Darwinex. Thank you very much for your attention. See you next time.